from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Welcome to the West Asia Post. My name is Hemkaur Saroya. This is a WION weekly show that gets you stories from perhaps the most volatile region of the world, West Asia. As has been the case for the past several months, tensions remain high. Now there are fears of a direct Iranian attack on Israel. This is wartime leader Benjamin Netanyahu faces challenges from outside as well as within. We've lots lined up for you on the show, but first, the headlines.
Iranian foreign minister reportedly said that Tehran is determined to respond to Israel's bombing of its consular building in Damascus last week, but will do so in an appropriate and limited way. Israeli police clash with protesters in Jerusalem. The ultra-Orthodox community is protesting against a new draft law which could end their exemptions from military service. The US has restricted its employees in Israel and their family members from personal travel outside the Greater Tel Aviv, Jerusalem and Beersheba areas amid Iran's threat to retaliate against its regional adversary. Turkish opposition leader Özgür Özel accuses President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of withholding billions of dollars of municipal funds crucial for investment in major cities.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is beginning to feel the heat. The resistance is gaining momentum. Pressure comes not just from outside forces, but also from within. From Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to old friend Joe Biden, the tide is against Bibi. In question is his strategy in Gaza. In our top story, we question, can the end of Netanyahu's term cut short this brutal war?
Slogans against Benjamin Netanyahu are getting louder. First it was the streets, then opposition leaders.
And now his allies at home and overseas are resisting too. On Wednesday, Bibi's decades-old friend Joe Biden said he is closely watching Israeli actions in Gaza. He even called Netanyahu's war strategy a mistake.
I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous.
The comments came after Bibi claimed that Israel has decided on a date for the Rafah ground incursion.
We are constantly working to achieve our goals. First and foremost, the release of all our hostages and achieving a complete victory over Hamas. This victory requires entry into Rafah and the elimination of the terrorist battalions there. It will happen. There is a date.
Soon enough, the Israeli defense minister refuted the leader's claim. Yoav Gallant reportedly told American officials that there is no such date set yet. There was also showdown with the American Defense Secretary. Lloyd Austin expressed the Pentagon's frustration to his Israeli counterpart that the US was not informed in advance of the Damascus attack. Washington on multiple occasions clarified that it had nothing to do with the strike and that it was informed only after the launch. Outside the corridors of power, thousands of Israelis continue to protest for the release of hostages.
We want to keep the hostages on the top of the public interest. We can't get this issue moved down as many forces in Israel try. And we are here to keep this top priority of the government. We're here to push the government.
The protests come amid concerning reports that most hostages have died in Hamas capacity. The Wall Street Journal, quoting American officials, reported that some of the hostages were likely killed in Israeli strikes, while others died of injuries and health issues. There have also been reports indicating that Hamas has been unable to provide the names of 40 living hostages, which has left the deal in a limbo. In between talks and warnings, famine has struck northern Gaza. The director of the US Agency for International Development has warned that people in parts of northern Gaza have begun facing famine. More than 33,000 people have been killed in the Palestinian enclave since October 7th, a grim number that only keeps rising.
Gazans observed Eid this week. But for a majority of the population, celebrating Eid was a luxury too outlandish to be a reality, given the circumstances. They took the holy festival as an opportunity to mourn their loved ones, those killed in the Israeli offensive, to pray for their souls.
This Eid is very different from others in Gaza. A day of hope, prayers and festivities is being spent mourning. Gazans are grieving the loss of their friends, families, homes and their lives. Sitting beside her son's grave, Amani Mansoor has very little to celebrate this Eid. Like many other Palestinians, Amani chooses to be close to her loved ones, who were killed by Israeli forces in the last 6 months.
When I think about last Eid, it was the best one of my life, because my son was beside me, in my arms, getting him ready. Everything he wanted I did for him. I wish he was here with me. He would go to the mosque in the morning and say to me, "Prepare my present for when I return." Gone. Everything good about my life is gone.
Amani is not alone. There are hundreds of mothers in Gaza facing a similar fate.
He's 30 years old, unmarried. He did not get a chance to be happy or married, and I was not happy for him. I was hoping he would get married, but God did not want to. Thank God it's God's will.
Eid-al-Fitr, the feast that ends Islam's fasting lunar month of Ramadan, started in Gaza on Wednesday. But there is little to cheer for Palestinians this year. There are hundreds of stories of loss and despair coming from Gaza. Among them, one is of Nidal Abdeh, a father who is cradling his young, dead son in the Al-Aqsa morgue. Abdeh said his wife and 3 children were killed in an Israeli airstrike on the Air al-Bala this week.
Our children have the right to be happy, to have a happy life and a decent life. As you can see, the occupation's planes, its barbarism and arrogance killed our children. One child, the second, the third, and their mother in such a barbaric way. I ask the American administration, Biden, to feel just a bit of shame and not to support the Zionist occupation that kills our defenseless children in their homes.
Most of those left alive in Gaza have been hollowed from the inside. Their days go by running away from Israeli strikes, staking their lives for a bag of flour, or queuing up hours for a bucket of water. More than 33,000 people have been killed in Gaza in the Israeli offensive.
Now, reports say an Iranian attack on Israel is imminent. No one knows when it may take place, how or from where. But all watchers are certain that it will happen, and it will happen soon. From governments to world bodies, everyone is bracing for Iranian retaliation, a response that will bring with it a wider war.
We are also preparing for scenarios of challenges from other arenas. We established a simple principle: whoever hurts us, we hurt him.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns Iran as Western allies warn of an imminent missile or drone strike by Tehran against Israeli military and diplomatic targets. Tensions have been high in the region since the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital was attacked. A senior IRGC commander was killed in the strike, and Israel has neither accepted nor denied the attack. On Thursday, US Central Command Chief Michael Kurilla held emergency talks with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Alongside US Middle East envoy called on foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar and Iraq to talk to Iran and to try and lower tensions in the region. Iran has warned the US to step aside if it wants to avoid damage. American officials say that the US is ready to defend its assets if Iran attacks them. Washington has also made it clear which side it will be fighting on. President Joe Biden promised Israel ironclad US support in case of such an attack by Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's news agency ISNA was recently seen showing off Iran's firepower. It laid out an infographic detailing the range and speed of Iranian missiles. Iran and Israel are around 1.7 thousand kilometers away. Between them are Iraq and Jordan. Analysts say Iran does not have the military capability for a significant confrontation. It can, however, attack via Hezbollah. The Lebanese militia, which has traded fire with Israel across the border from Lebanon almost daily since the 8th of October last year. Those exchanges have intensified in recent weeks. An attack can come in any form. And one thing is sure, both sides are bracing for a confrontation. But the question is, can West Asia afford this spillover?
And with that, it's time now for a short break, but do stay with us. There's lots more lined up for you on the other side.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
On the next episode of World of Africa, African leaders and global dignitaries mark 30th anniversary of Rwandan genocide as French President Emmanuel Macron receives backlash for stating that France and its allies could have stopped the 1994 genocide but lacked the will to do so. South African government goes hard on corruption just weeks ahead of national polls. Country's parliament speaker is forced to resign. And in an effort to remember and honor Nigerian schoolgirls still missing 10 years after their abduction by Islamist insurgents in Chibok, a film titled Statues Also Breathe is screened. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION. World is One.
Welcome back to the West Asia Post. My name is Hem Kaur. Here's a look at all the other stories from West Asia. In Jordan, officials and experts are now claiming that Hamas is inciting its citizens against the state. Thousands of protesters have been marching for weeks, calling on Jordan to break ties with Israel.
Thousands of protesters chant for Palestine. In between new accusations playing out, Jordanian authorities are now blaming Hamas for encouraging protests in capital of Amman. Since the war broke out, thousands have been marching on the streets of the kingdom, calling on the government to do more, to cut all ties and deals with Israel.
The Jordanians are protesting for the third week near the Zionist enemy embassy in support of our people in Gaza and to assure the Jordanian position that considers the Palestinian case and Gaza as part of the national issues for the Jordanian people. In the last few weeks, Jordanian security forces have resorted to using force and even arrest protest leaders from across society. They claim that the agitation is now taking an anti-state route. Earlier this week, Jordanian Parliament's lower house Foreign Affairs Committee issued a statement. It said that they reject any attempts carried out by a small, infiltrated group that seeks to sabotage and undermine national unity in Jordan. Recently, senior Jordanian government officials have also accused the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas of inciting the population against the governing authorities. They claim that the groups are doing this in service to Iran, which seeks to destabilize Jordan.
Jordanian analysts say there is no sense in the protests continuing even after King Abdullah's repeated calls for a ceasefire. Jordan has been at the forefront of humanitarian deliveries and has openly slammed Israel's prosecution of the war. Jordan shares the longest land border with Israel, and almost 60% of the kingdom's population are of Palestinian origin. Jordan was the second Arab country after Egypt to normalize relations with Israel in 1994. The peace treaty with its Jewish neighbor was not welcomed by the public and still remains deeply unpopular.
Israel-Hezbollah tensions along the Al-Shabaab border, it's left hundreds of dogs homeless. Their owners, fleeing for their lives, were forced to leave their furry friends. And now a former soldier has taken on a mission to rescue them.
Abandoned pets and strays are sometimes the only living beings left in some South Lebanese towns. For the last 6 months, the cross-border conflict between Hezbollah and Israel has not only taken a toll on human lives, but it has also deeply affected the animal population. The four-legged furry friends have been left to fend for themselves amidst the chaos. Many of them, abandoned by their fleeing pet parents, face starvation and diseases. Nizar Hatom, a dog trainer and former soldier, has taken the initiative to intervene. He is rescuing stranded and abandoned dogs in the areas affected by the clashes in southern Lebanon.
Due to the Israeli shelling on the southern regions, many dogs are losing their homes, suffering from injuries or lacking proper nutrition, among other issues. Therefore, we've decided to take in every displaced dog, providing them with medical treatment and a home to nurture and care for.
Every day Hatom ventures into the streets. He tirelessly searches for these abandoned dogs and once rescued, provides them with much needed food and care.
For a while, we searched for displaced dogs on the streets, offering them food until they started trusting us and approaching. After gaining their trust, we took each dog in, providing them with shelter.
Hatom had set up the shelter in his village of Mimes. It is located in the Hasba district at the slopes of Mount Hermon. In addition to training dogs, the shelter also serves as refuge for the rescued animals. It offers them a safe haven away from the dangers of the border conflict.
Now, our next story is about a Trump family member and his links to West Asia. We're talking about Jared Kushner's private equity firm, which has signed a deal with a company connected to the Israeli defense industry.
In between slamming statements and paused negotiations, it has now been reported that West Asian powers have invested significant money in a firm linked to Israeli Defense Ministry. The link between Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Qatar is former White House Middle East policy advisor Jared Kushner. Former US President Donald Trump's son-in-law has a Miami-based investment firm, the Affinity Partners. It recently purchased a $150 million stake in the Shlomo Group, which is an Israeli car leasing firm. The catch is, the Shlomo Group is in partnership with the owner of Israel's only domestic builder of warships. The parent company of the Shlomo Group also partly owns Israel Shipyards, the only Israeli company that builds ships for the Israeli Navy, including vessels armed with American-made missiles. Kushner, in a recent interview with the New York Times, said he didn't invest in the naval part of Shlomo Group's business. But it cannot be ignored that most money that went towards the deal comes from the Gulf power holders. Saudi Arabia invested $2 billion in Kushner's fund under the direction of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The United Arab Emirates and Qatar invested $200 million each. Back in March, the Affinity Partners' financial disclosure showed 99% of the funds given to the firm are from foreign investors. This brings us to the larger role Kushner played in America's West Asian policy when Trump was in power. The chairman of the Shlomo Group also hinted at the same. He said that money wasn't the main need, from Kushner. However, it was his connections that could help open up business opportunities in the Middle East. Kushner played a pivotal role in brokering the Abraham Accords, which led to the normalization of relations between Israel and several Arab nations. This included the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. During his time as US West Asia Czar, Kushner emphasized on building relationships with Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, to help counter Iran's influence in that region. But experts are critical of his dealings in West Asia. Some say that Kushner's close relationship with certain Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia, raised questions about potential conflicts of interest and human rights abuses.
Muslims around the world celebrated the festival of Eid-al-Fitr this week. The three-day festival marks the end of the fasting month. And here's how people in West Asia celebrated the festival of giving. And that's all that we have for you on this edition of the West Asia Post. We'll see you next week with a brand new lineup. Till then, keep watching WION World is One for all your global news updates.
The biggest democratic exercise on the planet ever. Decoding the multiple colors of this multi-dimensional, multi-layered spectacle. WION deciphers the images and the hues. Sifts real performance from rhetoric and noise, claims and counterclaims, populist pitches and hidden truths. Untangling, unraveling this celebration of democracy.
Tehran informs Washington that it will respond to Israel's Damascus embassy attack. But a cautious Iran underlines it wants to avoid major escalation. Yoav Gallant warns that a direct Iranian attack would require an appropriate Israeli response against Tehran. Washington reaches out to Tehran through allies. Will the US keep up its ironclad commitment to Israel's security?